Hey everybody, got a bit of an exciting thing to do here today. We're going to be doing a quick little setup of a Quai Network node for the Iron Age Testnet. We're super excited to have everybody hop on and set up some nodes, miners, kind of get to play around with the network a little bit for this testnet. So super excited to be doing this, and let's get right on into it. So to start out, just to kind of go over a few overview things, I'm going to be doing this on a Mac OS environment. It's going to be somewhat Linux based, but going to be different than kind of your other traditional Linux distros. But the process on something like Ubuntu or Debian is going to be incredibly similar to what we're doing here on Mac today. So now that we've kind of gotten our initial environment out of the way, we're going to just go ahead and navigate to the Quai Network docs page, and we're down here in the node overview section. We'll do a kind of a quick little overview of the types of nodes that you can run on Quai Network for this Iron Age testnet. So to get started, kind of the highest level node that I expect most people not to be running is going to be a global node. It's going to validate all 13 chains within Quai Network, and it's actually going to have quite a bit larger hardware requirements just because it's running all of those chains simultaneously. So that is one of the options that we run for this testnet, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend that everybody actually run what we call a slice node, which is going to be validating. It's going to be a bit smaller. It's going to be validating 3 of the individual chains. It's going to be prime, one of the regions, and one of the subsequent zones under that region within Quai Network. It's going to be a bit more accessible for everyone, as it's going to have lower hardware requirements. It's also going to be a little bit easier to configure, as we'll see as we get through the rest of this tutorial. We also have a couple of other configurations, multi-slice and watcher, that we won't go through here in this tutorial, as we don't currently have support for them, but they'll be coming soon in the next few testnets, so watch out for those. So now we've done a little bit of an overview, we'll go ahead and actually get right into the tutorial. I will preface this by saying, again, that we're running on Mac. As you can see, I've got my Mac terminal on the left side of this window, as well as the Quai Network protocol, running a node, miner, stratum proxy, some of the other things that we'll cover in other tutorials. It's not going to be supported on Windows or WSL2 at this time, because they're welcome to mess around with Windows implementations, but I would recommend not, as we don't currently support any of those, and it requires quite a bit of extra additional configuration. So your best bet is just going to be to run on something like Ubuntu. It's quite simple Linux distro, or a Mac OS system, as we're doing here today. So to get started, we got to install a couple dependencies here. I've actually gone ahead and already installed our favorite package manager on Mac, which is going to be Brew. Got the downloader install link right here. If you're running on something like Linux, or Ubuntu, I should say, you'll already have apt installed as default, so you can just go ahead and kind of run through that. I know Debian and a couple of other Linux distros use something like Yum, but we're going to stick with apt and Brew today. So first thing we're going to go ahead and install, after kind of running through this initial setup stuff, is going to be Golang, and we're going to be installing VU 1.2 or 1.21.0. Make sure that you've got that up-to-date version. It is required to run the node, and because we're on a Mac OS system, we're going to be grabbing the Mac OS install command, going to be using Brew as our package manager, and we're going to just go ahead and run that here. This may take a sec, as Brew can be a bit slow sometimes, but shouldn't take too long here. And then also, I should clarify, if you're running on Linux, particularly on Ubuntu, you can go ahead and do this snap install command. I know some other Linux distros have snap installed or available to install, but this is going to come default installed on Ubuntu. If you are running on something other than Ubuntu or Mac OS, I recommend going and checking out this Golang installation page. It's going to be a bit more difficult of an install, but it's really not that bad. Cool. And then now that we've got we've got Golang installed. We're going to go ahead and install our other dependencies, which are git and make. And because we were running on Mac, we're going to grab the Mac command right here, install it via brew, run that real quick. Let it kind of do some of the fetching. I might turn this down in size so you guys can see a little bit better. Move this over somewhat. Cool. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, now that we've kind of completed that command, I'll clear out the terminal here, and we'll go and start going to install GoQuai. So to do that, we're going to need to clone the GitHub repo, which I've got right here, and we're going to just install it in the root folder of our machine. We will get rid of this CD for now. You guys can just run the whole command, but I'm going to run it piece by piece, just so you guys can see exactly what we're doing. So now that we've got the command completed, we've installed GoQuai, and we're going to navigate to our GoQuai directory that we've got installed right there. So now that we've navigated to it, we've cloned it, navigated, we need to make sure that we go check out the latest release. And so what we can do here is we're going to go to the latest releases page. We're going to see that the latest release right now is V7 or V0.17.0 RC.1. We're going to copy that, go back to our docs page, and check out how we actually check out that release here. So it's going to be something like this command, where we'll replace this latest release here with the version that we just copied. Same thing kind of with this command. These are more just to show you guys the format of the command. So what we'll do over here is we're going to run git checkout and then paste in that tag or release that we just copied from the releases page. Cool. And so it'll give you kind of an interesting, it's not an error, but it's just letting you know that you're in a detached head state. This is completely normal with checking out one of the tags. So we've checked out that V0.17, and we're now on that on our machine. I believe I can do a git status and it will tell us, yes, exactly. So this is completely normal. It'll say head detached. That's just kind of how it goes with Git. And so now we've kind of got everything installed. We're going to start actually configuring our installation. And so what that's going to start with is this very important file you guys need to be familiar with and know. And that's going to be the network.env file. And this is kind of the configuration file that tells your node exactly what to run, how to run it, configures your addresses, and so on and so forth. We'll go a little bit more into what that actually means here, but we're going to grab this command, which is, we've provided you a boilerplate or like a template file that's going to be this network.env.dist. And so what we need to do is we're going to copy that template file into our own environment file so that we can make changes without exposing some of the sensitive variables that actually go into this node configuration file. So we're just going to go ahead and run that in our terminal. It's not going to spit out anything, but now we do have available this network.env file in our current directory. So now that we've done that, we're going to be able to actually go ahead and configure this network.env file. There are a couple of key things that we should probably touch on here. If you're going to be mining, this Coinbase is going to be very important. You're going to have to change the Coinbase for each of the shards within Quai Network to your own address for that shard to actually get mining rewards to that address. And so we'll say here, there's one Coinbase address per shard, and we'll see that here in a second when we go through. And then the network is the other very important variable that we're going to need to change here, or take a look at the very least. So for the Iron Age Testnet, we're going to be running on the network Coliseum, which is our live network that all of you guys will be connecting to. And so we'll take a look at that when we go actually into the file. And then also I should note that there are a number of other more advanced parameters that we're not going to specifically cover, but those will all be contained within that network.env file. And so for you guys who are feeling adventurous or know quite a bit more about development than I, you guys can go ahead and configure some extra stuff in there. So And then I think this is probably important because I don't know how many of you guys are super familiar with the Linux environment, but there are a couple of different ways that we can actually open up and edit this network.env file. So for some of the more advanced developers, they're going to use Vim. So for some of us that are not as advanced, typically use Nano as it's a bit more user-friendly. I will be doing that in this tutorial. And then also for some of our Mac users, VS Code might also be available on Ubuntu. I'm not entirely sure, but you can open up this repo in a more user-friendly environment in VS Code, but we're going to go ahead and stick with our Nano, trusty old Nano here for this tutorial, so we can kind of cover all of the Linux users as well. And so we'll clear this out, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up the network.env so we can edit it with Nano, and that'll just be this nano network.env file. Cool. And it opens it on up for us. And as we talked about earlier, we were talking about these Coinbase addresses. We can see that we have a Coinbase address for each of the 9 available shards to mine. So if you are mining, you'll go ahead and grab your public key from your Pelagus wallet and pop that in here for the shard that wallet is located on. And Pelagus, or whatever wallet you're using, should tell you which shard, so it should be pretty easy to pop that in there. But what we're really interested in right now is scroll it down a ways. I know there's a lot of kind of random networking stuff in this file. We want to get down to slices and network. We'll start with network. So you guys see here, network is the current network that we're going to be running our node on. Let's see if I can make this a little bit smaller so we can kind of see everything. So there are going to be 3 different networks that you can specify here. And so if you're just wanting to run your node on the Coliseum network, which is the live Iron Age Testnet, we'll just keep this Coliseum here. That'll allow you to connect with peers on the live testnet and do all that fun stuff. You'll also be able to potentially connect to Garden, which is going to be our dev environment. As well as what we're going to do here for this tutorial, which is just going to be to set up a local node, which is not going to peer with any other nodes and any other networks. We're just going to run it purely on our own computer for some development purpose. And then what I also will say is nonce is another important variable that we need to take a look at here. When you're running on Coliseum, you likely will have to change this variable as it serves as kind of the password for access to the network. And so when we go live on, I guess tomorrow, for the Iron Age Testnet, we'll provide you guys with this nonce, and you'll just pop that in here, change this. This is going to be 0 for local, but the nonce value will change for Coliseum. So just be aware that if you're getting some Genesis mismatch errors later on, it's likely because your nonce is not correct. And then I guess those are kind of the big things that we need to change, just kind of taking stock. We changed network to local because I'm currently going to be running on local. If you want to run on the live testnet, you'll change that to Coliseum. And then lastly, the only other thing that we're going to cover in the network.env for now is slices, but I guess we'll probably leave that for when we get to actually starting the node. So what we're going to do now is, now that we're kind of done with our network.env for the moment, we're going to save, which involves Control-O. This is a Nano specific thing. Then you're going to press Enter to write to the file, and then we're going to Control-X, which will get us out of that file. We'll clear that back up. And then, we've got some couple other things, but just make sure you change your mining addresses. If you do not change, you will not get credit for the blocks that you are mining. That is very important. And then make sure your network variable is set correctly. And then here, we'll kind of touch briefly on router configuration. This is something that's relatively new for this testnet, but I want to make sure that if you guys are running a node, it is absolutely required that you have universal plug and play enabled on your router. This will allow you to accept peering connections from nodes that are not directly our boot nodes. It is required to be able to run a node, and your node should output an error and slowly shut down if you try to run without this setting enabled on your router. So I won't cover exactly how to enable that, but you can find more detail on how to enable universal plug and play on your router in this article right here. And note, we tried to cover as many routers options as possible with this article, but if your router is not included in there, it's pretty easy to just go to Google and search up the router model that you have, and then how to enable universal plug and play. And there should be directions on it. And now we've kind of gotten all of our configuration set up, at least for the moment. So now we're going to get into actually running the clients. So this is the fun part. So what we're going to do here is first, to start, before we run the client, we have to actually generate the binaries. And so we're going to do that via the make command. So we do make go quai. That will spit out a bunch of fun stuff at us. This is actually building the binaries. So we'll let it run here for a sec. Got a lot of stuff it's got to format and get ready for us to be able to run here. Sometimes just give it a sec. Cool. So now that we've generated the binaries, we're all good to actually go ahead and run. And so kind of touch back on the two options that you have when you actually want to run a node. You have both the global node option as well as the run a slice node option. So that's kind of the two things that we talked about earlier. Running a global node is going to be much more computer resource intensive than running a slice node, as it runs all 13 chains within Quai for this testnet. So I would, you can go ahead if you have a big computer, if you have a powerful computer, go ahead and just make run and run your global node. But I personally would recommend that everybody goes ahead and runs a slice node. It'll be a bit better for network optimized latency, which we'll touch on in a sec, as well as it'll just not stress your computer as hard. I personally will be running a slice node. I recommend you guys do the same. And so to be able to configure a slice node, we're actually going to have to go back into that network.env file. So I'm going to clear this out. We're going to reopen our network.env file. And we're going to go all the way down to that slices variable that I covered a little bit earlier. And so running a slice or multiple slices is actually just going to be running a subset of chains of the global node. And so typically what I'd recommend most people do is run a single slice. And so that's going to be a combination of the shard, a specific region within the network. So that could be Cypress, it could be Paxos, it could be Hydra, as well as one of the zones underneath those regions. And the way that we actually specify those shards or slices that you're going to be running is by their number index. As you can see here, it's 0001, kind of so on. The first number is going to be the region index. The second is going to be the zone index for that region. And I think we've kind of detailed that here a little bit. And if you're looking for more kind of information or specs, you can visit this region and zone index page. It'll give you more specifics on which index maps to which shard. But what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to select I guess a random region for now, but generally speaking, a region that kind of fits within this map here. So I'm currently in the United States, so I'm going to select something that's in region 1. That's going to be Cyprus. I guess that may be a tad bit confusing with the zero index stuff, but we'll just say region 0 for now. So Cyprus. And so I'm going to pick one of those slices that is in this region, and we're going to change this slices variable to only contain the array that has that slice. And so we'll do that by going and deleting all of the other arrays in here, and I'm going to choose 01. You guys not everybody should be running on 0.0.1. You should select your slice that you're running based on the region that you're in, and this map makes the network a bit definitely more efficient in terms of latency. So go ahead and just take a look at that map and select one of the shards that you like to run there. And that should be all good to run our slice. We've selected the 0.1 slice, which is going to be Cypress 2, and we're only going to be running that chain. So now that we've selected our slice, we're going to go ahead and save our network.env. Going to exit out of it using Control O and then Enter and then Control X, and we're back to the general terminal. And so now that we've actually gone ahead and configured the slice that we're going to be running, we've built the binary, we are ready to run, and running your node can be done simply by just running make run. And on the first run right here, we'll see outputs this command make directory node logs. That's just saying that we've actually made the node logs, and we're now taking in data and printing it out to that node log file. That means that we are running. Cool. And so now that we're running, we want to actually verify that we're running, which is important. We want to make sure that our node is running correctly. And so we can do that by grabbing one of these tail commands. And I particularly recommend you guys to be running the tail command at the bottom, as we want to be checking the region, which is where all the state is actually flowing, that for the slice that you're running. And so earlier we specified in the network.env that we're going to be running zone 0.1. And so we're going to grab this command right here. We're going to want to check that log. And so we're going to change this to 0.1, going to run that, and it'll start outputting. This will just output directly to the terminal continuously until you stop it. All of the node logs, so everything the node is doing. So now it's kind of just waiting. Because we're running a local node, we're not making any transactions or mining any blocks just yet. It's kind of just waiting for blocks to be mined. And so this is, generally speaking, this is a bit clunky here right now because I have it in this half screen, but this will be what your node logs look like. There's a better accurate count of what it's doing right here. But generally speaking, this is good. Our node is running now, which is awesome. And then to stop this output to the terminal, if we want to go back to our regular terminal, we'll just Control C, and then I'll clear that out. So we've got a clean terminal here. Oh, and then yes, this is also an important note to make. So that those logs that I just outputted, they're going to look different for every node, especially if you're running on Coliseum. It's going to be streaming a lot more logs than that node was right there because we're running on local. But what I particularly recommend here is to just take a look, make sure a couple warns are okay. Like there's a warn right here. You're just looking to make sure when you check those logs, you're looking to make sure that there's not like a crash error that got caused by some random thing in setup or anything like that. But as long as it's streaming logs, you should be good to go. And then another really important thing about verifying and making sure your node is running is we verify that after we start, our node is actually syncing to the current chain state. And so that means that we start our node, it starts connecting with other peers, and then it starts downloading the chain state from the other peers and adds it to our record. And that's really important because our node needs to maintain the chain state. So the way that we can kind of check that our node is beginning to sync is we can grab this print command, which is cat is like a print command. We'll paste it into our terminal, and then we're going to go change the location to print here to the same location that we ran in the last command. So it's going to be zone 0-1. And remember this, depending on which slice you chose to run, I chose to run 0.1, is what you're going to put in these, let's say, chain index identifiers. And so when we run this command, because I'm running local, this likely will not output anything. But when you're running live on Coliseum, you'll see this command will print all of the blocks that you've appended. And so hopefully you should be appending a lot of blocks. And then what we can also do is, there's a better way to probably check our node logs here. So So we'll grab this command here, which is a tail F command. It'll do very similar to what we did when we printed the node logs. Is we're going to add this 0-0 or -1. And this will print continuously all of the blocks that we're appending. And so I'll do this. It'll spit out as you're appending blocks, and it'll spit out logs that look very similar to this right here. So it'll say appended new block, and it'll stream out here as you append. And to stop that, we'll just do Control-C. But so basically, why that's important is we want our node to get synced up to the current chain state. And so what it'll do is it'll continue printing logs as we add new blocks, and we'll see this number right here. And so that means that we're on, this log is from a test that we did. We were on block 50,075. And so what you'll do is you'll go, check the stats page, see what the current chain tip is for the slice that you're running. So that'll be that zone 01. And we'll say, okay, it's the current chain tip on stats is 50,078. Our node is appended this block, and so that means that we're currently synced. And so just waiting for your node to download all the blocks to get up to the current chain state. And that's a relatively rudimentary way to check your node's sync. It's very easy and kind of nice to do in the command line, keep it all in the same place. I will say there are a couple of other methods we can do to check if our node is syncing. You can check out the Quai syncing API method, which can be used via curl or a number of other RPC methods, I guess. Or you can also check out the Quai Postman workspace, where you already have this Quai syncing request built in. You'll run that command, and it'll return either status of what current block your node is on, or it'll return false if you are you've stopped syncing and you are currently up to the chain state. So yeah, that's we'll take a look at this note as well. I want to highlight this. So if your node temporarily stops appending, so that would mean it stops spitting out these appending logs, there's no need to worry. We've noticed that sometimes there's a little bit of stuttering when appending blocks. The best solution to that is kind of just to let your node continue running. This may happen relatively often, but we recommend letting your node run for about an hour. If it hasn't appended a block in an hour, that is kind of where we see might be a problem. So you can go ahead and reach out to us on support over something like Discord or whatever channels that we do have. And then lastly, well, I guess not lastly, but one of the more important things is actually being able to stop your node. So currently, we can go ahead and run this node logs command. We can see that our node is still outputting logs. It hasn't indicated that it's stopping, so we know that it's still running. If we want to go ahead and stop our node, what we can do is we can just simply run make stop. And it'll print this stopping all Quai Network nodes command a couple times until it's terminated all of your nodes. Sometimes it takes a sec, so just let it finish out. And once this command completes, we'll see that our node is actually stopped. And we can verify that by running this logs command. And it'll tell us, okay, transaction pool stopped, state processor stopped, header chain stopped. And so that's how we know that our node has actually stopped running. And regardless of whether you're running a full node or a slice node, that'll kill kind of all instances of GoQuai on your machine. So nice and stopped, it's dead. And then the last thing I want to highlight when stopping your node is if you are running a miner on top of your node, you have to kill the miner process first prior to stopping the node. If you try and stop the node while your miner is running, it will not like that, and it'll tell you to go stop your miner first. So make sure you do that. And then we'll clear our terminal here, keep it clean. I guess kind of the last part is actually maintaining your node. And I think this is probably one of the more important pieces of this Iron Age testnet, is to understand how kind of this works. As we're going to be pushing, the core team is actually going to be pushing a number of releases during testnet most likely. And so we want you guys to be able to, effectively stop your node, pull the latest code to your machine, check out the latest code, rebuild and rerun. And so this is really important to understand. And so I guess because we don't have a new release out right now. I'll just go ahead and pull the old one. But what we're first going to do to maintain and update is we're going to stop our node like we did previously. We've already stopped it, so it'll output this error and say, and it won't let us stop because we've already stopped our node. But we're going to make sure that our node stopped, and then we're going to pull and fetch all of the new code from GitHub to our local machine. Make sure we have that code locally. Cool. And so because there was no code, there hasn't been any new code updated since I just downloaded it 20 minutes ago. We don't have anything new, and git pull will just say this because we're not on a current branch. But this output is fine. It just means that we don't have any new code to pull in. And then after we've pulled all of the newest code to our machine, we're going to go ahead and check out the newest release, which like we did earlier, we'll go and get to this releases page. We'll find the most current version of the node, and we'll bring it on over here, paste it on in, and we'll check that out. And we'll see that the head is now, our head is now pointed at the most current release. So we're good to go. We've checked out that code, pointed at the new release, and now we are good to go ahead and remake GoQuai. So it'll do all this fun stuff again. Remaking regenerates the binaries of the new code that we just pulled. And so now that we've kind of done all of that, pulling new code, checking out the new code, rebuilding the binaries, we're good to go ahead and run again. So you can do that by just doing make run. I won't start it right now for the sake of this tutorial, but you are plenty fine to go ahead and restart your node after you've done all of that stuff. So now that we've kind of covered updating, I want to cover this last part very cautiously, as got some important and consequential commands in here. So at some point there may be a situation in which you have bad states, your node is kind of being funky and you want to do a full reset. There are a number of different reasons why you may want to reset or clear your node, but this is kind of the last line of defense when you're having a little bit of a bug with your node. And so what resetting and clearing actually means is going to be removing all of the sync chain state that you have from your node, and generally it's also accompanied with an update, but we just covered that. But yeah, resetting and clearing, we have the warning here is this is a non-reversible action, so any of the commands that we're running below should be utilized with caution. But yeah, I'll go ahead and show you guys how to actually do that. Remember this will clear all of your chain state, so use this command sparingly, as you generally speaking don't want to clear all of your sync chain state, as it takes a while to resync. But let's say that we have an issue with our node. We're on Mac, so I want to clear out the synced state and node logs for my node. I'm going to go ahead and paste that on in there. This is the Mac command, by the way. We've got one for Linux machines. It's got a bit of a different file setup, but what we're going to be doing here, what this command actually does is rmrf is remove. Node logs is the logs that our node is outputted that we were checking earlier. Excuse me. And then this tilde/library/quai, or for Linux machines, tilde/.quai is our actual chain state. And so this command in its entirety removes both the node logs and all of the chain state that we've synced. And so running that, be very careful when running that, as it will remove chain state. Shouldn't output anything, but we can go ahead and try and rerun this node logs command, and it shouldn't. Yeah, so we've cleared out our node logs. We've cleared out our synced chain state. So it'll say no such file or directory. But yeah, that's, I think, is all we're going to cover in this tutorial. We kind of went through to recap how to, install the dependencies, install GoQuai, configure our node, and then lastly, run and kind of maintain GoQuai. So it's been a pleasure getting to teach you guys how to actually run your node. I'm super excited to have everybody on this Iron Age Testnet. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please do hop in our Discord. Reach out to our mods, any of our team members, open a support ticket if you're having issues, and please have a great time participating in the Iron Age Testnet. See you soon.